weekly wrap-up, midweek show, where two guys sit around a camera trying to figure out what's going on. My name's Bob Dunlap.
And my name's Eric Matheny, and we have got a lot of new merchandise. You guys got to check it out. We got shirts, mugs, traveler cups, tote bags, stickers, hats, T-shirts. The website, newrightnetwork.com/store/WWU. Got our Patreon. Check that out. Please make sure to support us. Keeps us going twice a week, every week. All products made in the USA. None of that Chinese assembly line crap. We don't do that. We had an opportunity actually to manufacture our goods cheaper, but we said no. We're going to pay a couple bucks extra, but we're going to make it right here in the USA. So make sure you check out our Patreon, our merchandise. And guys, thank you for your support. Big day like the last couple hours with the unmasking.
Yeah. It's great.
So unmasking, acting DNI Richard Grinnell. First of all, Senate Republicans, take notes right now. Stop what you're doing. Take notes. This is how you act. Lindsey Graham, I'm looking at you. You are the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. You could have done this a long time ago, but you didn't. So acting DNI Richard Grinnell, he releases the list of Obama administrative officials who sought to unmask or reveal the identity of General Flynn between November 8th, 2016, which was Election Day, up until pretty much inauguration. And basically, unmasking involves the revealing of the identity of an American's private phone conversations without a warrant. On the list, U.S. Ambassador to UN Samantha Powers, DNI James Clapper, CIA Director John Brennan, FBI Director James Comey, big one, Vice President Joe Biden.
Biden, he said I didn't know anything about it.
He's been saying that. How long? Go pull the clips. They're there. Video is forever. How many times has he said, I knew nothing about it, and then he modified it. Oh, I knew there was an investigation going on. No, he requested the information. He made a request through the security channels to get that information.
You're guilty, Biden.
That's not just knowing an investigation's going on. You're a witness. You're a part of it, and you're going around saying that you had nothing to do with it. The media for 3 years built themselves up on this lie of Russiagate. I'm with the president. I think if you got a Pulitzer Prize for Russiagate reporting, you give it back.
Yeah, it's
Are
all
you
a lie.
kidding me?
How about all those people that went on TV and lied? They suck.
Here's what I've got it figured out. This is my theory. By no means is it novel or new. We all have to ask ourselves why. Why would an outgoing president who served 2 terms do this? Now, it's one thing, even though it's not right, we would understand if you're running for a second term and you're trying to game the system to get an advantage so you can win the election, at least then I won't condone the behavior, but I understand it. I cannot understand what Obama's reason for doing this would be. He's leaving. He served his 8 years. I think I got it figured out. He wanted Hillary to win, not because of party loyalty, not because he thought she would be a good president. I don't even think he likes her as a human being, but I think he wanted her to win because she is as dirty as he is, and they both would keep each other's secrets. If there's one thing about Washington, and we've talked about it here before, it's not a system of favors, it's more a system of blackmails. I know the things you've done, and you can trust me because you know the things I've done, and we're not going to rat out each other.
Well, that's why they had to get General Flynn. He knows where the bodies are buried.
You know, Obama likes to brag that he had a scandal-free administration, but lest we forget Fast and Furious, lest we forget Benghazi, lest we forget the IRS, lest we forget the ISIS caliphate growing to 30,000, 30 different countries, all on his watch. I think it's one of the dirtiest administrations since Warren Harding and Teapot Dome. I think you're talking about real corruption, deep-seated corruption, and Obama had to cover that up, and he knew. I think it didn't matter, honestly, if Jeb Bush were the presumptive GOP nominee, like they probably thought back in 2013, 2014. They thought it was either going to be Romney again or it was going to be Jeb Bush. Either of one they would have been fine with because they're deep state.
Right.
Their establishment, they can trust them. Obama couldn't trust Trump because Trump was the outlier, and they had such arrogance because the elite, if they're one thing, they're arrogant. They knew that Trump wasn't going to win. They knew that. They had staked their entire lives on it. And when she lost, the playbook had been thrown out.
Don't forget Benghazi. That was a little thing that went wrong.
Benghazi was huge. Benghazi was huge, and there were massive cover-ups there too. Obviously, Susan Rice coming on TV, we all know about that, saying it was a video. We knew the whole time it wasn't a video. So that's that. So we have yet to see. Now the ball is in the Senate's court, and now Rand Paul's come out today, and he said that there's going to be investigations. You know, everybody says investigations, but investigations have to lead to charges. An investigation without charges is empty rhetoric. So we got to see something happening. I do think in the last 2 weeks, with everything going on with Flynn and with everything, the Obamagate revelations, I really think the biggest blow to the deep state's been struck really in the last 2 weeks.
I love that guy that dropped those unmasking. How about another huge topic? How about Judge Sullivan and Flynn?
Let me catch my breath, man. That really had me upset. So here we are thinking that Flynn's off the hook. And obviously we all know that in federal court, you make a motion. The moving party, the government, making a motion to dismiss. And Bob, we even said on the last show that, oh, the judge will grant it. It's a formality. Well, we were wrong. We couldn't predict what this judge is going to be. This is a Judge Sullivan. He's a Clinton appointee. And what he did is he said, I'm not going to rule on it. I want to hear third party or non-party, rather, opinions called an amicus brief. And what that means is that it's normally done in civil cases. I've never seen it done in criminal cases. And it's very rarely done in criminal cases where you invite interested parties who are not parties to the litigation, but they may be interested in the outcome to offer their opinions, right? Friend of the court opinions that they could read. So he's invited these groups to do it. One of which that's going to do it is a group called the Watergate prosecutors. Gee, I wonder where their interests lie. And he actually just appointed a judge, a retired judge, to make arguments as to why the case against Flynn should not be dropped. Guys, this makes no sense. The government, the entity who brought the charges, is saying, we don't want to prosecute this anymore. The defense is obviously in agreement with it. It's an uncontested motion. This is, Judge 101, sign the order and move on. No, he's really inserting himself politically. He's bringing this retired judge in, not only to make arguments as to why the case should not be dismissed, as to why Flynn should be held in criminal contempt of court for perjury, being when he took the plea, Mr. Flynn, do you admit to a factual basis for the plea? Yes, Your Honor. That statement that everybody says every time they plead guilty, whether it's jaywalking or murder, that factual basis that's part of the colloquy, he wants to have him prosecuted or hold him in contempt for perjury for that.
What he's really appealing to is the low-level information people that are going to see that this other side, if Flynn's guilty, and they're going to say, well, this is just political. This is Barr's just political.
What doesn't make sense, when we think political, we think an advantage to be gained. This guy's a federal judge. He's got a job for the rest of his life. He doesn't have to run for re-election. He doesn't have to run for reappointment. He's there unless he commits a crime or does something horrible. I think the guy's just a left-wing ideologue, and I think he looks at what's going on. I think some of the statements he's made have been troubling. If you look at the statements of the retired judge he's bringing in, who's called this, a politically motivated involvement of the president. He's really criticized Trump's involvement. This could be a problem. I think also what's happening, is that the judge is going to force Trump to pardon him, because if he doesn't dismiss the charge, then what happens then? The government's going to have to take it to trial. And I think at that point, or not even trial, let me take that back, and they're going to have to proceed to sentencing because he's already pled guilty.
Oh, Jesus. This is
so Trump's going to have, Mr. President, sir, you have to get involved. If this judge denies the motion, you need to get involved. You need to step in. You need to help this man. This man has been railroaded, and he's getting railroaded again right before our eyes.
And don't forget Roger Stone while you're at it. Just saying.
I got something to say.
Oh, yeah? Go.
We are not all in this together. I hate the expression, we're all in this together. Now, I get it. There's comfort in shared experience. And when you think back to the days of Soviet Russia, you think back to Cuba, everything's like the people, we're together. There's power in that. There's a sense of community. They're appealing to our tribal instincts that, hey, it's like going to a haunted house. Like, it's scary by yourself, but you're okay when you have your friends. Experience is positive. Well, let me put it this way. If we're all sitting in a big bucket of shit, we're still sitting in a big bucket of shit. So we see the hashtags, we see the commercials, cue the sad music. You got some paunchy middle-aged dad doing yoga poses on the carpet with his son, watching the TV, and then a brave delivery driver bringing your tacos, and it says, oh, we're all in this together, staying home with you. This company is looking out for you. The theme, we're all in this together, the subtext clear, this shit sucks, we know, but we suffer alongside you. But they don't. They don't suffer alongside us. The House is not in session. They're getting paid $174K a year. Where I sit right now, where I'm recording the show right now, less than 1/4 mile from my very seat is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's at home. I rode my bike today. I rode right by her house. She is home collecting $200,000 a year or more. I think she gets a lot more than that because of her seniority and chairmanships and whatnot. And she's collecting a check doing nothing while 15% of workers in this country, soon to be 20%, are out of work, not by choice, but by government mandate. So the feel-good campaigns, it's like being repeatedly punched in the head while the government smiles and applauds our bravery, telling you it's good because it's a collective experience.
That's good, man.
We're in a bad place, man. We are in a bad place. And we got to get this, we're all in this together shit out of our heads, because we're not. If the Hollywood celebrities that do the stay-at-home concerts and Elton John playing Piano Man in his living room is supposed to make me feel better, Elton John doesn't have it in his life and he would be fine. Robert De Niro doesn't have to work again. Arnold Schwarzenegger's sitting in his jacuzzi saying, nah, just have a stogie. He doesn't have to work again. We do. So we're not in this together.
What's pissing you off, Eric?
So, unmasking Flynn, positive note, let's move on to something positive. 2 special elections today.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Tiffany in Wisconsin. That was kind of expected. That's rural Wisconsin. That's Trump country. He won. But the big one was Mike Garcia, who took Katie Hill's seat. Now, that seat has been held by Democrats for over 20 years. Mike Garcia got it. And if you all remember, Katie Hill was the one, no clothes, combing the intern's hair, who was involved in the three-ways and kinky young broad, but I'll tell you, not suitable for Congress.
You might want to disinfect that office before you go in there.
You might want to do that. So Mike Garcia, congratulations on that. We got a great guest tonight, very good guest, a gentleman named Luke Negron. And Luke is running in the 18th Congressional Circuit of Pennsylvania. He's trying to unseat Mike Doyle. Mike Doyle's been there since 1995, a Democrat who voted on both articles of impeachment. Now, Luke is in the U.S. Air Force, so we applaud him serving his country. And he's a young guy. I think he's younger than I am. And that blows my mind that, people that are younger than me are getting involved in politics now. Like when, what's his name? I can't remember his name, Buttigieg. Buttigieg is younger than I am, and I couldn't believe that. But anyway, you see all these younger people getting involved. It's, it's generational change. I think we need that. So we want to bring Luke Negron on here to tell us all about his campaign. Luke Negron. Weekly wrap-up with Bob and Eric. We are back with Luke Negron running in Pennsylvania's 18th Congressional District, trying to unseat Mr. Mike Doyle. Luke, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing quite well, gentlemen. How are you doing tonight?
What's up, Luke?
You've been an interesting day, to say the least, and we're very glad you're here because we want to talk about Mike Doyle. Mike Doyle's been there since 1995, probably since you were a kid.
That is correct. He has been around in Congress for 25, going on 26 years. He's been in politics for about 40 years. So that's several decades too long in my book.
I agree with you. Several decades by far. I think even a single decade being far too much for that. Luke, what drew me to you was something you said on your website, and I want the viewers to hear this. The last generation of Republicans and Democrats has largely failed us. And that jumped right out at me because Bob and I always talk about that the victory of Donald Trump was not a victory for the Republican Party. That was an anti-establishment victory. And you see that. And you see that in the younger candidates, that this two-party system we've had for the last 40 years, whether it's a Clinton, whether it's a Bush, Obama, or whoever, has largely failed us. So with that in mind, what are you looking to do in unseating someone who's been there for 25 years?
That's right. So number one, I think we need to call out elitism. Elitism is a bipartisan issue, and something I love to say that I think speaks to kind of the spirit of what you were just saying is that simply having an R next to your name does not make you a good guy in my book. You have to do more than that. I'm a big believer in a merit-based system. That's what we have in the U.S. military. I believe it's a great system of advancement. You have merit that you show, and that's how you advance. I believe that's what we should have in politics as well. Don't tell me whether you're an R or D. Don't tell me whether you're, a male or a female or what your ethnicity is. I don't care about that stuff. Show me your merit. Show me who you are as a person. So this comes to something that I want to bring to politics that I've seen some other great leaders bring in as well, which is transparency in politics. This is a reason that against some political advice, some people who want to play the political game, I put my policy positions out there on my website. I have literally had people tell me, maybe you shouldn't have your policy positions on your website, because that way you can flex with the times a little bit more. You can change where you stand. You can, negotiate a bit. No, I want my policy positions to be out there on my website so that people can go there and know who I am. They don't have to play a guessing game. So transparency in politics, the positions on my website, that's one way that I want to show that. Another way is by supporting term limits. I don't believe that anyone in the House or the Senate should be elected and have the incumbency benefit or the advantage of the incumbency for them for decades on end. I believe that's wrong. And I believe that we need people like myself and some other great young leaders who are willing to vote themselves out of a job because they're citizen leaders. They don't want to be Washington elitists and insiders.
I couldn't agree more. And, when this country was founded, that was the idea, is that people who were successful in life would go into government to give back, and it would be a limited thing. Obviously, you're in the Air Force, correct?
That's correct.
How long have you been in?
Going on 4 years now.
See, that's incredible. And we need people like that with real life experience, with leadership experience going in. Now, for people who don't know, the 18th Congressional District is located where in Pennsylvania?
So you're going to basically have Pittsburgh proper. Then if you move southwest, you're going to have Upper St. Clair and Bethel Park, down to the southeast as far as Elizabeth Township. And then it kind of has this little arm that wraps up northeast to Plum Borough. So an easy way to say that would be Pittsburgh proper and the South Hills region. That's about PA 18. It was drawn with some gerrymandering in mind, so it's a little bit like a complex jigsaw puzzle piece, but that's kind of the general region.
Now, here I am, and I've only been to Pennsylvania a couple times. I don't know Pittsburgh very well, but when I think of Pittsburgh, I think of old steel country. I think of Trump country. How has a Democrat been there for 25 years? What's the political makeup of that area right now?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting that you should ask that, actually, because PA 18 has been redrawn several times in recent history. And PA 18 is actually a new district now. So it's new because it was recently redrawn in the last couple of years here. And now it includes some of the South Hills, which have a lot more red influence, a lot more Republican representation. So PA 18 is actually more in play now than it has been in recent history in the last several decades. And really, I think a reason that a Democrat has prospered there is because Pittsburgh's not a very radical city. Mike Doyle's kind of the type of guy who got into power several decades ago, kept his head down, kept quiet, didn't rock the boat, not outwardly passionate about anything, and no one heard from him again. So in a very centrist city like Pittsburgh, where you're not really putting yourself in the news, that's kind of been his way to survive. That's been his pathway to victory again and again and again every 2 to 4 years. So that's really what we see. However, that's an opportunity for us because these centrist voters, these union blue-collar workers, they can be talked to. They can be reasoned with. They're great people. They're working-class people, and they're people who we're looking to work alongside.
And that's good to hear. And I think today with the special elections going on in Wisconsin and California, it's got to be really inspiring to hear Tom Tiffany's victory, which was a little more expected in rural Wisconsin, but Mike Garcia coming out of, really stealing this victory. We thought it was going to go to the Democrat, taking Katie Hill's seat, obviously being ousted for that little scandal that she had. But that was a district that had been Democrat for over 20 years. And now we have a Republican in there. So anything's possible. So to think that just because someone's been there, and Luke, you hit the nail on the head. Here's a guy who I had no idea who he was. And when I was looking at some things about you before you came on the show, I said, Mike Doyle, I had to look him up. I've never heard of the guy before. And more, when we have candidates on the show, we're finding, people running against these candidates who have done exactly that, who have flown below the radar. I guess you could call them like C-average students. I mean, just not bad enough to fail and really not setting the world on fire, just enough to keep their jobs. And it's really hurting this country because you got way too many of them.
That's right. And how wild is that to think that this guy has been a civil servant, an elected official for over 25 years at this point, and he has no noteworthy thing to show from his resume. The people of Western PA and of PA as a whole don't know who he is. Wouldn't you think that after 26 years, someone should be known? There should be something that they can point to as their great moment. But the answer is no, that's not there. And this is classic career politician. It's classic elitist. You get into power, and then you use your position of power to defend your position of power. You ride it out, and then you ride off into the sunset a couple decades later with a great pension. Well, my team and I are ready to throw a retirement party for another career politician come November.
Absolutely. Now, Luke, if you were to come on this show 6 months ago, we'd be having a very different discussion than we're having right now. If you get elected, assuming that you win, you're coming into a very different type of government than you probably thought you were going to when you first thought about running. And this is the COVID-19 era. So you coming in, obviously being sworn in, you're going to be dealing with this recovery. What steps do we need to take to get America back on the right track economically and get us back to where we were 6 months ago, and then some, get that unemployment back to 3.5%, get that GDP up, get that stock market back up?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's easy to criticize. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot to criticize out there, but criticizing alone isn't enough. It's not enough to sing. You have to also stand for something. If you criticize and you don't offer a path forward, there's a problem there. So my path forward looked at having possibly tests, feel they can test coronavirus, something as a test, make a lot now because of some of the misrep we've seen from the mainstream media and from local elected officials. They've been made very fearful to feel safe. They need something that tells them, okay, I tested myself, I'm safe. I'm able to go about my everyday life. I don't have to live in fear. I think that's a big thing that local governments can implement and can maybe even fund and push from a policy perspective to help. I think we need to start reopening. I think we need to share raw data. We need to show that actually the early projections and death rates and infection rates were way off. We have more people infected, but less deaths. That's actually a great thing. What the mainstream media has been doing is just telling you half of that truth. They've just been saying more people infected. Well, more people infected, but what they don't tell you is that a lot of those are asymptomatic. They have no symptoms. And out of those people infected, the death rate is dropping because very few of them are actually dying. So sharing raw data like that is really important, again, in making people feel safe to go back to work. And then the last thing I'd say is that our machine works. Our economy works. We just need to turn it back on. And of course, we need to be wise about how we do this. We need to do this regionally, and we need to do this with demographics in mind. So your grandmother with a pre-existing condition, she probably shouldn't be going back to her job at the supermarket, right yet. But if you're a 26-year-old who's healthy otherwise, the data is really showing that if you're willing to go back to work in a free society, that's your decision. And in my book, it's fairly safe. No one's entirely safe, but that's life. We all live with risks. So educate yourself on the raw data. Those are some paths forward that I see.
Well, Luke, I think if you get into Congress, I don't think you're going to fly below the radar. You're very well spoken. You got your ideas. You got your head on straight. You definitely got the Bob and Eric show endorsement. So, if we were in your district, we'd vote for you, but we are encouraging our viewers in your district, vote for you. Where can people find you? And most importantly, how can they support your campaign?
Yeah, guys, feel free to reach out at negron2020.com. That's my last name, negron2020.com. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram link there. There is a donate button, so you can donate electronically. You can also donate by sending a check. There will be an address listed on the website as well. You can use that contact form to get in touch with myself and my team. We're always looking for volunteers. And the number one thing that people can do, and it's free, is word of mouth. Word of mouth, referrals from trusted sources, you talking to your friend, your brother, your family member. about the Negron campaign, what we're doing to protect American values and to flip a vulnerable seat that most people don't see as being vulnerable. That's a huge thing that you can do. Talk to people and support us through that.
Nice.
That's fantastic, Luke. Seriously, our hats off to you. Best of luck. If you're in Pennsylvania's 18th, vote for Luke Negron. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. We're going to have you back before the election.
Excellent.
Sounds good, gentlemen. Thank you. Hey, have a great day, and stay healthy out there.
Thank you. Likewise. We are back. So, again, late breaking news today out of Wisconsin. Wisconsin Supreme Court throws out the state's stay-at-home order.
Let's do that in every state.
I think that's good. Okay, so conservative majority says the order is unlawful, invalid, and unenforceable, in ruling that sides with Republicans who sued over the quarantine. So Governor Tony Evers of Wisconsin, like many governors, instituted stay-at-home orders. The governor was sued by a group representing Republicans, and the court's conservative majority ruled with them and said, yeah, you can't do that.
It's unconstitutional.
They challenged the order as now they're beginning a nationwide reopening despite warnings from health officials ending the lockdown without consistent safeguards could lead to a spike in infections. I mean, look, we all know that. Why even have a virus? Why not just call it the boogeyman? I mean, if you make it scary enough, everyone's just going to listen anyway.
I know, right? No, it's fine, people.
And then here's the thing. Here's what pisses me off is that originally the whole purpose of all of this, of the lockdown and quarantining people who are well, was to flatten the curve. Remember when that was the quote of the day, flatten the curve? And now it's wait till a vaccine. But I've heard it even taken a step beyond that. The first vaccine is not going to work because the virus is going to mutate. We have to wait until there are multiple vaccines. I'm telling you, man, you've got a group of people in power and a group of people following behind them in this country that would love to have a quarantine for the next 5 years.
They want to ruin America. Let's just cut through the fat.
Bump the unemployment up to $1,000 a week. On top of that, have the government give you $2,000 a month. Freeze rent, freeze mortgage. Everybody's taken care of. You have no bills. I mean, we are transitioning into that. And do we need to see more pushback by Republicans. We need to see pushback. We need to get our lives back. And you know what? It's a dangerous world out there. It's a dangerous world.
Everybody should sue. Like, I'm in North Carolina, we should sue the governor.
I mean, even the Republican governors aren't necessarily getting it right. I mean, you hear that even in Florida. I mean, we love Ron DeSantis down here, but he's doing a gradual phase 1 reopening of 65 of 67 counties. Broward, Miami-Dade being excluded from that. Restaurants operating at 25% capacity, and anyone in the restaurant business knows that 25% capacity is not enough for you to pay your bills.
Right.
I mean, my God, at some point, and not only that, not only the economic impact, the social and cultural impact of this distancing is everybody's acting. I feel like we're waiting in line in the men's room to use a urinal, the way we're interacting with each other. You're standing 6 feet behind and you're trying not to look at anyone because it's awkward. I mean, we're living our lives like we're in a men's room.
That's great. I was just at Target and my son and I, we're not wearing masks. The Surgeon General recommends not wearing a mask. And here comes this old lady with a mask.
So when you go to Target in your city, isn't there a sign on the door saying you must wear a mask to come into this business?
Well, I didn't see it. No one stopped me. And if they did, I would have turned around and left.
Where I am in Broward and where my office is, and I'm in Miami every day, all the buildings, all public buildings, all grocery stores, restaurants, my office building, anywhere, you got to wear a mask. You have to have it. And the thing is, they're a private business. They say you got to wear a mask on the property. You do.
Just buy a Chinese one where it'll be like not even wearing one because they make them so crappy.
I went to the dentist yesterday and I walk in the door and I didn't have a mask on and they stopped me. Go, oh my God, go get your mask. I'm like, I'm at the dentist. How are you going to access my teeth?
Oh.
I've heard the restaurants that are opening, you have to wear a mask until you sit down and eat. I would turn and leave, man. I hate wearing the thing. I get hot. You're breathing your own air. I can't hear. As it is. And when I have someone wear I can't understand a word you're saying.
Good times, man. When we
We've got to share germs. My God. Immunities, people. Immunities.
Seriously.
We have evolved over 2.5 million years from chimps to what we are now. We can have a debate on that a different day, but that's what I believe. And look, We've developed immune systems, and those immune systems are in place for a reason. And by staying home and isolating, we're killing those immunities. I guarantee, we've all said it, Bob, we've said it here on this show countless times. When we go back out in the world, you're going to see a spike in flu, and everyone's going to go, oh my God, COVID-19, let's lock down again.
I hope I catch it. I've never had the flu. I never get sick. My immune system is so strong. I hope I catch it. Said it.
The people who need to be quarantined, stay at home. If you're over 65, if you've got a compromised immune system, whatever the case may be, by all means, stay home. But if you're healthy, go out there. Herd immunity, guys. Herd immunity. The herd. We gotta build up our immunities. And 99% of the people who get this, more than that, are going to be fine. This is the greatest overreaction in history. You know, again, but one thing, Bob, again, and I don't want to be, a conspiracy nut here, but the timing of this, I'm sorry, where was coronavirus this time last year? Oh no, it was Mueller. Mueller was going to take down Trump. Where was coronavirus back in September through January? Oh, no. Ukraine, the impeachment's going to take down Trump. When did this land? When did this come? After all that.
Right when she wasn't bringing the impeachment articles over, when she was holding on to them, that's when it was spreading.
And we know, and I know the left is trying to discredit her, but we know from Dr. Judy Mikovits, a respected virologist, that this virus, she didn't say that it was intentional. She said that it was created in a lab. Now, she believes it may have gotten out of that lab by accident. She's not going to opine on that. But the virology, the actual physiology of the virus, she said that if left alone in nature, that would take 800 years to reach that level. That where it is right now is an 800-year mutation that they did in 10 years, and they did that through whatever they're doing in those virology labs.
We should blow them all up.
Bryan Adams, one of my favorite musicians, got in big trouble. You hear what he said the other night?
I did. I read it, yes.
He's pissed off because he can't play. He's had a bunch of gigs lined up, and he went on Twitter and he said, due to some, bat-eating wet market, I can't do my gig. And everyone's trying to cancel him. Look, he doesn't give a shit. He's a great musician. I echo his sentiments, man. Like, businesses are hurting. People are hurting because of that, because of China. How we so often remove that blame from China. But like we've said, countless times in the show, China's going to have that reckoning. We got to have that League of Nations moment with China, and soon. And I hope that we'll open it up so that we could sue them. I know China said, if you sue us, we're not going to do anything. But I think what we could at least do is maybe pull our manufacturing out.
That's what I was going to say. Pull it all out.
Get them to write off our debt.
Yeah, that's how we can ruin that country. No one will have a job.
So with that being said, Bob, you got anything else?
I'm good, man. Sue your governor.
Sue your governor, guys. Take care. Enjoy the week. We'll see you Saturday. Thanks for tuning in.
2020. Welcome to the weekly wrap-up, where two guys sit around a camera and try to figure out what just happened. My name's Bob Dunlap.
And my name's Eric Matheny. And Bob, did you get to try that excellent coffee from Black Brew?
I did, but I had it hot with sugar and cream, the way I like it.
The way God intended. I like sugar and cream, too. I try to stay away from it, but honestly, you can use just a little bit. I heard the greatest fitness advice the other day. One salad is not going to make you lean, just like one cookie is not going to make you fat. So you can indulge if you want. And guys, we're talking about the Black Brew. That's BLVCKBREW.com. Promo code weekly to get free shipping. It's the best cold brew coffee. Again, drink it any way you want, black, sugar and cream, whatever you want to do. But Starbucks mostly is still closed. And if you're going to go to the drive-thru, you're going to pay $4.25 for pay a couple dollars more. You're going to have coffee last you a whole week. So we'll have that information streaming down here. Guys, we also have nrnplus.com/shop/WWU weekly wrap-up. You can come and contribute and help support the show. Also check out our Patreon, patreon.com/weekly wrap-up. You can always find that link in my Twitter bio. And then there's, of course, the New Right Network store. We got a lot of great merchandise. We just got stickers, these nice bubble stickers. You can put it on your laptop. So when you're out at wherever you're going to be when world reopens, you can let everyone know you're a supporter of the show. And again, guys, stuff like that supports the show, keeps us going. So we do thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Bob, something really is bothering me.
What, Eric? What's bothering you?
So, Bob, I got a problem. Something was really keeping me up last night.
What is it, Eric?
Have you heard what's going on in California?
Aren't they sending all the voting to the illegal aliens?
Well, no. The other day, Gavin Newsom announced that he's going to send an absentee ballot to every voter in California. Now, normally, if you want to vote absentee, you request one. But now he's going to be sending one to every voter in California, encouraging them to vote absentee, which, again, this is a way around the mail-in voting that they've wanted to push. They tried to push that through in the CARES Act, which obviously didn't make it to the final bill. Now, the thing is, the reason why it's concerning is he's going to give an absentee ballot to every voter, encouraging them to vote from the comfort of their home, send it in, make it real easy, but he's going to provide in-person voting. The problem is he's going to put up impediments, creating, quote-unquote, safe space for social distancing, which you know what that means. You're going to have about 5-10 people permitted to go in a polling place at once, which is going to quadruple the amount of time you're waiting.
Right.
So it's going to be an impediment to actual voting in person. It's going to encourage people to mail their votes in, and that's ripe for voter fraud. And the problem that I have, look, let California do it, because Trump's never going to win California. Michigan is a Democrat-run state. Minnesota, Democrat-run state. Wisconsin, Democrat-run state. Pennsylvania, Democrat-run state.
North Carolina.
Trump needs Michigan. He needs Pennsylvania. He needs those states. He needs Ohio. He needs Iowa. He needs all those states.
Right.
And the problem is, if these Democrat governors start following suit and doing what Newsom's doing, you've got a situation where it's ripe for voter fraud.
It's the only way they're going to win is voter fraud. So he's got to put in an executive order where you have to show up in person. He's got to do it, or we're screwed. We're going to lose the country.
Well, that's the thing. So action's got to be taken right now to prevent this from happening on a massive scale. Now, the issue is you can vote absentee. You can request an absentee ballot. You could do that. Now, if one's just automatically being provided to you, the likelihood is more people are going to mail their votes in. Now, the Democrats, their biggest problem they've had for years and years is voter turnout. Democrat voters, by and large, they have a lack of enthusiasm. They have more low information voters who don't come out and vote. Conservatives, if you told us we had to wait 10 hours in the snow, we'd do it. We're more enthusiastic about voting than the Democrats are. So obviously there's really two reasons. One, they want to increase their voter turnout, which, hey, check the box and mail it in. But two, it's ripe for voter fraud. Because what do you think is going to happen? Look, Trump won by only tens of thousands of votes in one state. I mean, it was a very close election. What happens if a box of ballots here and there gets lost?
We're screwed. I'm telling you, if we don't do something now, we're screwed.
So it's really an issue. Now, it is constitutional so long as he's providing the in-person alternative. But if the restrictions on in-person voting are such an obstacle to voting and your free exercise of your vote, it could definitely be unconstitutional and face a challenge in the courts. The equivalency would be like a poll tax or literacy test. And I hate to draw that parallel, but that's really what it is. And that's kind of the litany of Supreme Court case law that comes from that, is you can't put up these barriers, these arbitrary barriers to voting. The problem is we're living in an age where constitutional rights don't matter anymore because we have a quote unquote pandemic. And under the guise of for your own safety, you see how the government can erode your rights away. And all of a sudden, hey, look, we can only let one person, two people, three people in a polling place at a time. So that line is going to take you 7 hours that would normally take 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's a total scam. And we're all aware of it. So.
And we're going to take your temperature before you go in, and we're going to do this and that. So you said it, Bob. What we need is a national executive order. We have to have voter ID, where you have to present ID to vote. Now, if you want to get an absentee ballot, that's fine. You got to present ID. I don't care how you do it. You got to present ID. You want to vote in person, you got to present ID.
I heard
a system where you have 40 million people in California mailing in their votes. I guarantee you it's going to be fraudulent.
I heard a statistic just recently that 497,000 people had to turn down jury duty because they weren't citizens. Yet apparently they can vote.
That doesn't surprise me. Well, remember, look, Newsom's the one who also gave well over $100 million distributed to illegal aliens.
I hate California.
Man, I'm from there. I lived in California. I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. I lived there till I was 18 years old. And even when I was in college and even in law school, I'd go home to visit. I haven't been to California in almost 3 years. But it's changed a lot, man. The traffic is oppressive and the politics are beyond loony. And the thing is, and anyone from California will tell you, when you get outside of Los Angeles and San Francisco, it's actually a conservative state. The problem is the population density is located in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and they kind of control the way this state goes.
Hate them.
Well, moving on, it's been a great week for justice, a really great week for justice. We could take a big victory lap. First and foremost, General Flynn.
Ta-da!
Exonerated.
The DOJ never does that either, by the way.
Rarely do they do that. What they did is, and first of all, hats off to Sidney Powell. Hats off. Not literally, no way. Not until I get a haircut. But Sidney, she exemplifies what a defense attorney is supposed to do, and that's finding the truth. And that's tireless, zealous advocacy for your client. Now, Flynn had some lawyers beforehand from a firm called Covington & Burling who got him to plead guilty. Now, I don't know whether it was lazy lawyering. I don't know whether there was nefarious intent. I can't make that judgment. What I can tell you as a defense attorney is, yeah, a lot of your clients are going to plead guilty because the evidence normally will implicate that there's some evidence of guilt. Here, Sidney knew what her case hinged on, and it hinged on those notes. It hinged on those work product documents that the first attorneys overlooked and didn't even try to get them. She got them. She filed the motion to compel. She fought it tooth and nail, and she got it. And it revealed the evidence that she needed to exculpate her client. And Bill Barr and the DOJ did the right thing. And upon realizing that, they filed the motion to dismiss. The judge has to grant it, but it's a formality. So he's going to be exonerated. Everybody's saying next week is a big bombshell week. What do you think is going to happen next week with respect to the people who perpetrated this crime? And crime is not, I'm not loosely using my words here. There were crimes committed.
I hope they all get arrested. But, you know, when you're going to talk about those 53 articles that were released last week too?
No. What about those?
Well, it was, Barr released, Adam Schiff released those 53.
Yeah, I was going to get to Schiff in a moment here, and how we got ahead of him there and forced his hand. But with respect to Flynn, specifically Flynn, and when we talk about Schiff and we're talking about Flynn, it's all related to the same thing. They're different arms of the octopus. It all goes back to the same thing, which was trying to get Trump. Everything was to get Trump. George Papadopoulos, Flynn, those were all ways to get to Trump. Russia, Ukraine, all of it. And I think even now, what we're living through right now, these are all efforts to get Trump out of office. I even hear they're floating a second impeachment idea, might be coming this summer. We'll see. But anyway, with respect to Flynn, the perpetrators who brought the charges against him, what do you suppose is going to happen to those people? Because everyone's saying bombshell's coming next week.
I don't know. Hopefully they'll get arrested and thrown in jail forever. I don't know. Hope.
But specifically with respect to Flynn, there are a number of people who need to go down for this. And I think the evidence is showing that Obama knew.
Oh, yeah. He definitely knew.
This was coming from the top. So you got Comey, you got Brennan, you got Clapper, you got Sally Yates, you got Lisa Page, you got Peter Strzok. That's not even an all-inclusive list. You can keep going from there. But it's all related. All the corruption is related. Loretta Lynch, again, I go back. I've talked about it on the show many times. That tarmac meeting was the tit for tat. That was the exchange. That was the bribe. You drop the case, drop the investigation against Hillary, we're going to give you a Supreme Court pick.
Right, exactly.
So we have yet to see what happens. But for Flynn, my position on that is, yes, I want to take a victory lap. I want to congratulate him. I think Trump should get him back into the administration.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Did you hear this? Did you hear what they're saying on the left, that if Biden wins the election, they're probably going to try to prosecute him again, Flynn?
Oh, no, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, statute of limitations doesn't run. I mean, the statute of limitations runs from the date of the offense, but once the charges are filed, I mean, they can refile absent some double jeopardy concern, which it doesn't apply when the DOJ voluntarily drops the charges. They can refile these. And so if Biden wins, if God forbid Biden wins, they will go after Flynn again. We live in a whole new age of politics. This is like Soviet Russia. You know, if the other party wins, we're going to go punish all our political opponents.
They're going to go after Trump too if Biden wins.
If Biden wins, they will. They will open up a criminal probe on Trump, and they'll try to do that. And we know, look, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Mueller, for the last 30 years, the DOJ has just been a decaying agency. Yeah. And we've got some serious problems with the leadership, and not necessarily directly related to the Justice Department, but here in the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff. We already knew this, but he was exposed as the sociopathic liar he's been his entire life, with all the documents that we've been trying to get, all those closed-door depositions, all the things we've been trying to get, finally got released.
Yeah.
Grinnell.
Thank God.
Said, release it. Basically, what you have is you have all this testimony happening way before Mueller, way before the hearings, and way before Adam Schiff is telling the press, yeah, we've got evidence. You've got Susan Rice is saying that there was no evidence when she gave her closed-door deposition. James Clapper, this is a direct quote from James Clapper, former director of national intelligence. I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election. Now, he said that back in January of 2017. And Mueller, he testified in July of 2019. And for that period of time, 2.5 years, you had Adam Schiff on CNN, MSNBC, on Bill Maher, all over cable, in the House, telling everybody, we have the evidence, we have the evidence. And they knew from the get-go that they had done. Because these people, you know, say what you will about them, they didn't lie under oath. They didn't lie in their depositions. They didn't lie in their hearings. Suzanne Rice said, I didn't see anything. James Clapper, I had no empirical evidence. That should have been the end of it. As a former prosecutor, if my witnesses come forward and say, I have no evidence, that's it.
You know, they go on TV and they lie, all of them.
So, but the thing is, like, again, where's the accountability? What's going to happen to Schiff?
He's charged with treason and hung.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. You know that's not going to happen. I mean, realistically, I mean, we need accountability. I got to understand. Maybe you can help me. I mean, get to the psychology of this guy. He's a congressman. He does nothing for his district, but he is just absolutely focused, laser focused on Trump. I wonder, was he abused as a child? I mean, does he have some childhood trauma? I'm not trying to disparage people who have been victims of abuse, but the way he acts like somebody who is taking out his frustrations, his inadequacies on someone like Trump. Like, maybe Donald Trump represents like the popular jock and Schiff was the kid who got his milk money taken. I don't know what it is. Maybe he was abused. I don't know what it is. But there's something fundamentally wrong with him. And also the way that he can lie. The way that he can lie with that impunity, that is not something you develop. That is something that you are born with. That is ingrained in your psyche and maybe solidified through years of childhood trauma. I don't know what it is about him, but there is something fundamentally wrong with him as a human being.
He's just a Democrat. They all lie. They all went on TV saying that they lied. Clapper lied on TV. Brennan lied. They're just great liars.
Yeah, and it was the 53 interviews that he had tried to hide, and we finally got it, and none of them, they knew from the get-go that there was nothing to it. And again, goes back to Page and Strzok, the text between them, the insurance policy, he can't win. And what we're sitting on, I hope next week this bombshell means indictments, because we're all getting impatient. I know everybody likes to say justice is coming, but justice delayed is justice denied. This has been going on now, coming on 4 years.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
I'm telling you, as a former prosecutor, all I would need are those texts between Page and Strzok to indict them. That's all you need. That's evidence of a conspiracy right there. Conspiracy being the meeting of the minds to commit a crime, and then any overt act done in furtherance of that conspiracy is the conspiracy itself. That's the offense. They can at least be charged with that.
God forbid.
Well, with that being said, I want to bring on our guest. We have a guest today, a gentleman named David Galvin. He's an author, a patriot, and he's got a lot of thoughts on education. And I think that's important to bring him on because as we see our rights erode, the way that we get from being a country of freedom to a country of tyranny is through the education system, that if generationally we can manipulate the minds and not teach them about the intent of the framers and what the First Amendment, the Second Amendment means, what all that means, what your Bill of Rights mean. If we could take the meaning out of that, if we could put that social justice bullshit into education, then we can manipulate the minds so that as your rights erode, you believe that that's in your best interest. I mean, education is the key. Look at socialist countries, look at communist countries, look at the Nazi Germany, look at Cuba, Castro youth, Hitler youth. It all starts with the youth because, hey, look, this generation may think they have freedom, but the next one, they may go, what is that? We never learned about that. We do what the government tells us. So David Galvin, let's bring him in and let's hear what he's got to say. Weekly wrap up with Bob and Eric. Welcome back and welcome to the show, Mr. David Galvin. How are you?
I'm great. How you guys doing today?
So, doing well. It's been a good week for justice. It's been a good week. Generally, stock market up a little bit. Things are looking on the up and up. Some disturbing news that we were talking about before you came on, coming out with Schiff and the 53 transcripts and just learning a little more about what happened with Flynn. But we want to get a little bit on your background. So tell us about your book and the work that you do.
Yeah, my name is David Galvin. I'm an author. I also write for trendingrightwing.com. And I also have a homeschool program that's really great for Christians and patriots and for people that want to get their kids out of the public school system. So I'll talk about my book first. This is my book, The White Horse Rideth. It's book one of a 7-book series. It's pretty much based on the tribulation, which is talked about in the Bible. You have the 7 years of tribulation, which are the last 7 years before Jesus comes. My book's pretty much geared for Christians and patriots. I've just taken the information about the deep state, shadow government, New World Order, and take it with Bible prophecy. I put it together to come up with a fiction series that would tell like what would happen in the future in America if we do come to this time in our country. And I have it starts in the year 2025. Donald Trump has left office. The deep state puts in another puppet and they start to go into overdrive. And I just have characters, young man named Buck Johnson out of Texas. He's aware of what's going on. He's aware of Bible prophecy, but he's like one of the few. So the deep state goes into overdrive. They do a series of false flags. The next thing you know, Christians and patriots are on the run. So it's pretty much like an action adventure of what could possibly happen into the future. It's sort of like a panoramic. It also has like different things going around across the world. You start seeing the rise of the one world government, one world money system, and the one world religion. And that's pretty much my book right there, brother.
Nice. I mean, it's so topical. It's, you look at what people are watching right now. One of the interesting things is on Netflix, the series Waco, about the Branch Davidians, which actually came out 2 years ago. But now if you go to Netflix, it's trending in the top 10. I think it was like number 2. And I think people just looking at what's going on have a natural inclination to be interested in stories about government overreach and what the government can do, because we're living it right now. We're witnessing the erosion of rights. So I think something like that is incredibly topical. Now, David, I want to ask you a question about education, and Bob and I were discussing this before you came in. The erosion of rights occurs generationally and more as we continue down the path we're on with education and with a lack of civics and a lack of morals and taking prayer out of school.
Right.
I think we're ultimately going to come to a point where you're going to have generations that have no idea what freedom is, at the same time having their rights taken from them. How important is education and educating the young in maintaining and preserving the freedoms that we've known and loved for 200 years?
I would say it's very important. I think we have to look at the whole education system as a whole. If you look back, maybe just even going back 100 years ago, when the globalists really started to move into the education system, we all know about the Dewey Decimal System, that you go to the library and that way it catalogs books. But actually, John Dewey was a communist who went over to Russia about 100 years ago, and he saw how the communists were implementing their educational system to brainwash the children. And they brought it over to America about 100 years ago. And the Rockefeller Foundation started to move into this, and they started to implement this first through the Chicago school, not the Chicago school system, but the colleges, the Chicago college schools. And just over the years, they just gradually started to move into the more progressive era. So I think when we got to the 60s, that's really when governments really started to push on the public schools. And in 1979, the Department of Education was put into effect. And that was under Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan wanted to put it away, but for some reason he didn't. But I was a teacher for 20 years. So if you look what they've done, you know, like as you said, they took out prayer. And if you look at the statistics since then, you see more violence in schools, more problems, more issues. I've seen information like you go back 60 years ago, problems were chewing gum, talking out of class. Now it's like cursing at teachers, assault, get to the high school, something sexual. But at the same time, so that's the moral part. But at the same time, what they've done too, especially in the books, they're really pushing the left progressive system. Mm-hmm. If you look at social studies textbooks, everything's okay. You know, you go from the especially in American history, you go from the 1700s, you know, American history, 1800s, there's not too much controversy there. But once you get to the 1900s in American history textbooks in America, they really push the progressive movement. They really push things like the New Deal, FDR, Woodrow Wilson, the United Nations, and they start really hitting on feminism and you know, equality for African Americans. Now, of course, these are like some problems and everything. That's true, and they should be talked about, but they just overemphasize these things. If you look at these textbooks, the whole 1900s are just this big, giant propaganda machine. So what they're doing is they're brainwashing the young at a young age, and they don't teach them civics, and they don't teach them real American patriotic history based on conservative values. And that's part of my Homeschool Easy education program. My history part, it's all about patriotism. It's all about American history. It's not just focusing on the progressive movement. So I think that what's happened is we've gotten to the point in America, and this is especially true with the young, you know, you see the kids in their 20s and maybe in their 30s, and they're very radical. And I've seen like statistics saying that something like 50% of these people in the 20s and 30s, they will vote for socialism right now. They are socialists, and they have no idea really what socialism is. The education system does not talk about socialism. They say it's progressive. And even the term progressive, you start thinking, oh, we're moving forward. Yeah, things are getting better. But they don't get down to the nuts and bolts of really what progressivism is, which is really a subsection of communism. And do people really know what communism is? Do students really learn these things? What happened in Russia? What happened in China? Do they know tens of millions were dead? No. Do they know 6 million people were died in the Holocaust? Yes. That's the whole racist part. But do they push the communists killing 60, 80 million in Russia and China, and what's really going on there and how that contrasts to what goes on in America, the freedoms we have? Not one bit.
David, I think one of my questions, based on what you said, so we talked about, you know, problems in school 40 years ago was gum chewing, and now it's violence and a litany of things. How much of that can you actually attribute to the schools, or is that more just cultural decay and problems at home? Where does the school take responsibility for that, and where do the parents take responsibility? That's what I think people are trying to balance.
Well, I think it's also a combination of the two also. One thing that you look at the schools to begin with, and I know this was true over the Obama administration, they were really looking at the racial component of this. And if they saw, let's say, 20% blacks of the population of the school system, and they see that the referrals and suspensions were like at 40% black, I know the Obama administration would come into there and they would tell these school districts, hey, you got to even this out, or you're not going to get your federal money. So you do have a discipline problem going on at the schools. And it's also because a lot of these schools have this humanistic policy where they just think that, you don't want to discipline the kids too much. They're going to learn to be good and everything. And then they're just running out of control. This is especially true like in the big city schools too. But, your point is, hey, it's the parents too. But at the same time, right now we're at an all-time high of single parenthood there. So we just got single moms. A lot of these moms, they're in their teens, early 20s, having kids. Daddy ain't there. Daddy maybe shows up a couple times a year, if at all. And they're not growing up with the basic moral values that were implemented in America, 60, 70 years ago. Right? It just becomes, it's like snowballing nowadays. So it's bad at the schools. The parents aren't disciplining their kids. We don't got dad in the home. You got a lot of moms, that are just too young, and they started having kids, at a young age. They're not even mature on themselves too. So right now, that's why we see you look at the statistics for youth, too many of them right now are involved, in drugs. Too many of them are having sex at a young age. And then the rates of crime with them have been going up. I ran into someone who worked for the juvenile department a few months ago. I said to her point blank, I was like, I bet you're seeing more and more kids into the system. She goes like, yeah. And I bet they're coming in at a younger age. She goes like, yeah, that's true. So it's the schools and it's the parents. It's a combination.
I can speak to that as an attorney. Yeah, you are seeing younger kids in the juvenile justice system, but you're also seeing a lot of kids there for things like disrupting assemblies, bags of marijuana at school, things that normally the school would take care of. But I think due to litigation and just fear of being sued and fear of accountability, they're sort of exporting their responsibility onto the police department. They call it the school to prison pipeline, where you have kids in middle school who are effectively getting arrested for disorderly conduct. It might be, disrupting a class where usually they get an in-house suspension or something like that. Now they're calling the cops because no one wants to touch it. So I think that's a concern too, is the schools want to shed their responsibility. And a lot of that comes back to the teachers union and the power that they have, certainly not looking out for the kids. A question I want to ask you about the way civics and history are taught. They are not taught from an American exceptionalism standpoint. They're taught from America as the oppressor, the imperialist power, genocide and slavery kind of mentality, right?
100% true. Yeah. Especially when you get to the 1900s of America, it just focuses on, putting down African Americans, putting down women. And it's even like in the reading programs too. So typically each student gets, a big, thick reading book with many stories in it. And there's always just several stories, of oppressed women, oppressed blacks, oppressed minorities. You definitely will not see any stories like on great things in America. You'll get like some inventors from like a long time ago, but anything conservative, absolutely not. You will never see any of those in their reading text or in their history books. And I think it just continues to reinforce a mindset with these kids. And also they'll have assemblies on this too. They'll have people come in and start talking about, things on the progressive issues, but you'll never see anything on the conservative side. Like, of course, you'll never see the NRA come into a school for an assembly and start saying, hey, these are the reasons why we should have gun rights, based on our traditions, based on the fact we don't want tyrants to take control of a country. It has nothing to do, with some macho thing. It's common sense.
Alternative, you say, would be homeschooling?
Yes. Most of the parents that tend to be get into homeschooling tend to be conservatives and tend to be Christians. And many that purchased my program and many that I've talked to, they pretty much feel the same thing. They're just tired of these schools trying to implement leftist values onto the students. Plus, these schools nowadays, they're just focused on state testing. Their classes are just pretty much,
it's all testing, it's all geared toward the test.
Right, it's pretty much, you're in a class, you're gonna take a test in April, May, it's gonna be multiple choice, you're gonna have 4 questions, you just gotta know how to find the right answer.
And it's not preparing them for anything beyond the test, and the test being so the school can justify its budget and keep everybody hired. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, unfortunately. So where can people find your homeschooling program if they're interested in getting their kids out of the public school system and doing an at-home school program? And again, everybody's homeschooling right now. I mean, whether you're doing it through your school district or whether you're doing it on your own, everybody's doing it right now. I mean, even my kids are in private school and their school's closed through the end of the year, as most schools are nationwide. So where can people find that program, and what does that program teach?
Okay, should I do the share screen?
Or just, I don't know if we can, but just tell us about it.
Okay, then it's homeschoolEasy.com. Right now, it's only through 1st through 5th grade, but it contains every single subject: reading, writing, spelling, math, history. I don't say social studies, I say history. And it's for the whole year, and I have a very cheap price. And also, I make it easy too. I go back to the fundamentals of how teaching used to be and how education used to be. Like I said, I was a teacher for 20 years, and I saw how it evolved. And the evolvement was not, how it evolved was not good. We were much better, like we just taught basic math, basic reading. We taught American history. And so it goes back to that, but also my program's just I made it so it's very easy to use for parents at home. And it's simple. You just order it. It gets delivered online to you. Just have to have a printer to print it out. So that makes it cost effective. I have links to videos on age reading, and very simple to use.
Nice. So that's homeschoolEasy.com?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, we'll have that streaming on the ticker. Now, I think a lot of parents have a concern. They're like, well, yeah, I'm not good in math. I'm not good in history. How can I possibly teach my kids?
Yeah, and first of all, mine is just for 1st to 5th grade, so just the basics right there. And like I said, you know, I went through my teaching college and all that. And I'll be honest, it was a waste. You don't really need it. It's just common sense is what it is. If you have common sense, then you can do it. And I have, you know, links to online videos, which makes it easy too. It's not complicated. I mean, even before there was a school system, you know, for thousands of years, adults taught children something. You didn't have to have a college education. You didn't have to be in a classroom. You know, people were on the farms, you know, learning how to take care of animals and to grow crops. You didn't have to sit into school for do that. It's just common sense.
Nice.
I agree, and I think we need a return to that. I also think we need a return to trades.
Oh, that was a big thing that they've taken out, you know, several decades ago. You know, I'm old enough to remember when they had like shop in class and they had woodwork and everything. But hey, you can't have a state test for that. So they pretty much put that away.
Well, let me tell you something. I had an electrician. Mind you, these electrician and tradesmen are working during this pandemic. I had an electrician come over yesterday. He had to fix 2 light sockets that were out, $492. I mean, he was here for an hour and a half. He owns his own company, and he's probably hitting, you know, one house after the other. Those guys are making great money. So you can go get a philosophy degree from some third-rate state college and go live at home and be a bartender, or you can go become an electrician, go be a plumber, go be a longshoreman. And these guys are easily making $100,000. I mean, a welder, you don't need a college education. You do your 12-month welder course, you do an apprenticeship. These guys, by the time they're 19, 20 years old, are making $80,000, $90,000 a year. And with no student debt, and you live below your means, I guarantee you a 40-year-old doctor is not doing as well as a 40-year-old plumber.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, David, hey, thank you so much for coming on. HomeschoolEasy.com. We're going to have all your information streaming down here on the ticker. Guys, if you're interested in getting your kids out of the indoctrination of public school, HomeschoolEasy.com. Check it out. David, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, David.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Have a good day. Talk to you later.
And we are back. David Galvin. Man, homeschool. I talk to people all the time. I know a lot of people that homeschool. That's, you know, you want to get your kids out of the indoctrination of public school without having to incur the expense, because private school, believe me, is very expensive. Homeschool, I mean, grades 1 through 5, probably have a tutorial. I mean, you don't have to be a history or math whiz. Certainly you can refresh the information and give it to the kids. And I like the fact that it's online, because so much of what our kids do now, I mean, my kids are 7 and 9 years old, and they are whizzes on the internet, and everything they're doing right now for their virtual school, they understand it 10 times better. They know how to go log on, and they know their codes, and they're doing all these programs. They're born into it. So people that are have the analog childhood, we're not nearly as equipped as our kids are. So homeschooleasy.com, guys, check it out. Again, we support patriots here.
Yeah.
All right, there's an issue that we can all come together on, and that's the Ahmaud Arbery murder in Georgia. And I say murder, I don't use the term loosely. Now, in a small town in Georgia, there are two men, Gregory and Travis McMichael, father and son, one of whom, the father, was a former law enforcement officer and then investigator with the county DA's office for many years. They saw a gentleman jogging in the neighborhood, 25-year-old black male named Ahmaud Arbery. They thought he looked like someone who maybe had been burglarizing homes in the neighborhood. They took it upon themselves to stop him. They parked their truck in the middle of the road. They were armed with shotguns. And when he approached, you could see the video. The video is graphic and it is disturbing, but the crime is on the video. Ahmaud Arbery is jogging down the street, sees the truck in the way, two guys with shotguns. He goes around the truck. He does what anyone would have done and runs away. They try to detain him. He sees one of the guys has a gun. The guy points the gun at him. He puts his hands up on the gun to protect himself. The gentleman who was on the truck, I think that was I'm not sure if that was the father or the son who was actually on the truck bed, fired, and a couple shots later, the guy drops dead. It took about until just the other day for these guys to be charged. The murder happened February 23rd, and they were not charged until a few days ago. Obviously, the video had to come out. There is no claim of self-defense. There's no fleeing felon. It's murder, plain and simple. Have you seen the video?
I haven't, although I saw Trump commented on it. I haven't seen it.
But you're familiar with the story, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, guys, if I could give you one bit of advice. First of all, these guys are guilty. There's no explanation. There's no way around it. Ahmaud Arbery, you know what? Let me tell you something. There's no evidence he was committing any crimes. He was jogging in the neighborhood. From a legal standard, even if he had been in the neighborhood committing crimes, these two gentlemen still don't have any legal authority to detain him. Under Georgia law, you can only confront someone if they're a fleeing felon or they're in the commission of a felony. So if he had burglarized a house and he's running out the door, then you could go give chase. If he's just in the neighborhood, you said, 6 hours ago he was burglarizing, you have no legal authority, no standing to do anything. And we saw this with George Zimmerman. We've seen it a lot. Now, Zimmerman got acquitted, but the actions that he took leading to the murder of Trayvon Martin were wrong. Vigilantism, guys, knock that off. If you see something, call the cops. It is never worth it to involve yourself in something that doesn't directly involve you. If some guy's been breaking into cars or houses in your neighborhood and you see him the next day, you go inside, you call the cops. Let them deal with it. Because even if you ultimately beat the rap, you're not going to beat the ride. You're going to get arrested. You're going to get charged. You're going to put your family through hell, personal and economic hell. You're going to get sued. You're going to be blasted all over the news. You're going to have your information made public. You're going to get death threats. Don't do it. It is never worth it.
Yeah, great advice.
And this guy was jogging. This guy was out jogging. I mean, we're all under some form of quarantine or lockdown. People are out exercising. People are out bike riding. The guy's out jogging in a neighborhood. Leave him the hell alone. And these two guys killed him, murdered him. So I think it was the right move. I think they should have been arrested months ago. First-degree murder in Georgia. I wouldn't want to be them right now. I don't know if it's going to be a death penalty case or what, but they are in a lot of trouble, and I don't see them being able to claim self-defense because they didn't have a right of self-defense. Ahmaud Arbery was doing nothing wrong, and I feel bad for his family, and my heart goes out to them.
Yeah, so sad.
So with that being said, guys, I had a great guest today, David Galvin. Check it out, homeschooleasy.com. It sounds interesting if you want to look into getting your kids out of public school and think about homeschooling them. A lot of advantages to that, certainly. We got a lot coming up next week. Everyone's saying the big bombshells are coming out with Flynn and with respect to Adam Schiff. See what's happening. Monday, some of the counties in Florida are going to open up on Monday. Broward and Miami-Dade are not, but Palm Beach County is opening, and barbershops and hair salons in Palm Beach County are opening Monday, which means I can drive 40 minutes and get a haircut on Monday.
God, That's going to be awesome.
I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to do it. It's desperate times, desperate action. So, guys, have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in as always.
God bless you, Trump 2020.
Hey everybody, this is Manny Alejandro. Welcome to another episode of Manny's Take. I am super excited about today's show. We have a tremendous guest with us, Chanel Rion. She's actually at the White House right now. Chanel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Manny.
So if you've been awake over the last couple of months, you've probably seen Chanel at the White House. She works for OAN. Chanel, maybe you could, as a chief White House correspondent, Chanel, maybe you could go over your background with us in terms of what you're doing and what you've been involved with at OAN.
Sure, Manny. Well, I have never really had formal journalistic training before coming to OAN. This month marks my first year at OAN and in broadcasting, and it's been a wild ride. We've had a really wonderful first year to cap off some big stories that we put out. I put out a Ukraine investigation series, starting to cover the White House. That's a whole nother chapter that has just been incredible day after day. But my background has been one that was more academically inclined. I was trained not so much in journalism, but more in international relations, more on the policy side. And that provides, I feel, a slightly more in-depth, I think, way of approaching the stories that I do each day. I had a minors in religion and literature, which helps me balance out all the policy side.
Sure.
I've been following politics all my life. All my life, I've always been interested in it. I had attended all 3 of the last New Hampshire primaries. Not this last one, but before that. I had attended since 2016, or 2007, 2008. Starting there, I had attended every single New Hampshire primary. We met with all the candidates, we shook their hands, we took their pictures, and we were political tourists. So I was raised in a very political environment. And I've always been a strong believer in providing into politics a realm of understanding policy and these big ideas through visual rhetoric, through communications that are traditionally monopolized by the left. And I feel that as far as the conservative press is concerned, they don't entirely tell stories in the ways that the left does. And it's because they don't appeal to emotion, they don't appeal to that kind of instant visual understanding that I think is very important when telling a story. So as much as the content is important, the presentation of it is also important. So that's something that I like to think that I bring an element to my reporting that's hopefully a little more illuminating as far as my background in reporting. So
No, it's tremendous. I'm a
your question.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, I'm an attorney, and I'm doing a lot more media now over the last couple of years, and I think it's tremendous. And I come at it with a different point of view. So I don't have the traditional training as well, but I have a different perspective, and that's what I'm excited about. Is I think there's room for all of us to thrive in the environment, and I think you're great at what you do, and I think you capture a lot of really intense situations during those briefings that I think is just incredible, that you usually don't see. Maybe you could describe for our audience what you've done. I know you mentioned you've done some work on the Ukraine. Was that with Rudy Giuliani?
That was, yes. We flew over to Ukraine. We interviewed individuals back when we had this Russia investigation. You heard these names being repeated over and over during the hearings. You heard Yovanovitch blaming Giuliani for pinpointing her and all these people in Ukraine. Really, that trip to Ukraine in November was one in which we simply picked out those names that we were constantly hearing in the hearings and saying, what is their side of the story? Because we were only hearing one side of the story when it came to the Russia investigations. And so when Rudy said he wanted to actually get these people, he could find these people, tell us where they were, we started looking into it. OAN sponsored the flight. We flew over there. It caused a bit of a ruckus, a diplomatic one even, almost. And it was very illuminating, and we showed people a side of the story that was not being told. And more than that, we brought back evidence. We showed documentary evidence where Ambassador Yovanovitch was lying before Congress when she said that the following people did not talk to her. We spoke to the former prosecutor general, who was allegedly fired by Biden back when this whole story started cropping up. We interviewed former prosecutors generals, and we've interviewed some really interesting individuals on camera and off camera. It was a 3-part series. You can go to OANN.com and find all three parts of this investigation posted there. And every week OAN does deep dive investigations. And that has been an incredible experience, just being able to go every week and dive deeply into a subject matter that the media tends to ignore, or tell a side of the story that is being ignored or being left out. Omission is just as much a part of the telling of a storyline as the telling of it. So we like to look into stories that are being ignored by the mainstream legacy media, if you will.
Absolutely. I've run for office in New York a couple of years ago. I had a couple of runs, and I was on OAN a bunch of times, and I'm very supportive of the network and a big fan of it. So I like what you guys do. And again, I think there's many lanes for many different voices, and I feel like if you have a different point of view, sometimes you're kind of pushed to the side because maybe you're not in the middle lane or the bigger lanes, but we should have enough opportunity to have rational discourse and agree to disagree potentially, or hear different sides of the story. So I think that's great. When did you become the chief White House correspondent? I know that must be so exciting. You're at the White House right now. I don't think our viewers could see, but she had showed me when we first set up the Zoom. Behind her is, there you go. Look at that. She's literally right there. That's awesome. When did you become the White House chief correspondent, and what were your feelings when that happened? You must have been so excited about that.
Well, Manny, I started in this month last year. So this month marks my first year at OAN. So when I first started out, I was the weekend White House correspondent, and I would come out here every weekend and sum up what happened in the week before and predict what was going to happen in the week upcoming. And that was a very nerve-wracking experience, especially for someone who A, has never been in broadcasting, and B, someone who never aspired to be in broadcasting. I simply loved to follow the story. So it took a little bit of time for me to kind of get used to the process of speaking on live television. And even now, I'm not very used to being interviewed myself. So I don't know if some of this will land on the cutting room floor, but it was nerve-wracking, but very exciting. And you understand, walking onto the grounds of the White House is an extraordinary feeling, and I remind myself every day that this is a very interesting moment in which we can be standing here at the White House looking at the players who are handling historic events that are passing by us right now, from the Mueller investigation to this pandemic that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Every single day is different. We have a lot of the same players who are still roaming about the grounds, but the game of collecting information and trying to cull what is real and what is not is it's different every single day. So when I first came out here, it was a great learning experience, and I'm still learning every day. but you mentioned that you were a former attorney. I had never planned on being in broadcasting, and so I constantly remind myself this is something in which I will constantly be telling myself I'm learning every single day how to improve this craft, how to bring a more concise, a better, stronger, more understandable story to our listeners, to our watchers every single day. I planned on going to law school myself. You just mentioned that you're an attorney. I was very interested in copyright law.
Interesting.
And my goal was to go to law school, get that solid background under me, and write children's books. Those are my two little parallel dreams: be a lawyer, write children's books, have a great life, and enjoy politics on the side. And that I fell into this role with OAN was serendipity. And if you believe in blessings, then it was a blessing. When looking back on my year, it certainly has been a blessing. I have a lot of mentors to thank along the way, and a lot of enemies from whom I have learned as well. So that's something that's been a lot of fun as we traverse into this White House and the politics behind it, and the politics behind the press corps down here. The year has been incredible. I guess at some point I'll write a book about it, and I'll let you know when I do.
Yeah, please. That'd be fantastic. We could have many more of these if you're up to it, and get into the detail as the experiences keep occurring. Why do you think there's so much antagonism between the mainstream media press corps and the White House? It almost feels like every time I watch either the COVID updates, the coronavirus task force updates, or the press conferences, now with the new press secretary, I think she's doing a tremendous job. She's super prepared and super ready for the job, clearly. But why so much antagonism? It seems there always was a bit with Reagan, but it didn't seem like the press corps was against Obama. It didn't seem every press conference was a fight almost, and it just seems every press conference or anything that Trump does in front of the press is this aggressive attack, and it really almost becomes difficult for the president to actually say what he needs to say. I think, in my humble opinion, I feel like he's always substantiating everything he does or has to say because he's always under attack. Why do you think that exists?
Well, Manny, remember the past administrations, and you mentioned Obama, but let's go back even further. Let's go back to Bush Jr. Remember when he received a lot of heat from the left, but I don't remember it being this vitriolic. Do you?
No.
I remember there were protesters, there were people who were against the war or who said he was all about the oil, but there was still some civility and there was still some professionalism. The professionalism now seems to have been completely erased, and I think the answer to your question is that this administration is one of the first administrations to have ever looked down at the podium, picked up a mirror, and held it up to the press corps and exposed them day after day for not only their biases, but for their hell-bent missions to feed their audiences with a specific narrative, and it has to be their narrative. Never before has an administration so openly and so clearly pointed out to the press corps their biases. You've had professional press secretaries who in the past, their job is to stand up there and be in the bully pulpit and defend the administration. But this administration actually goes on the attack, not only on defense, but it goes on the attack. And so the press has never really received that kind of pushback from a seat in power. Usually the press used to be the gatekeepers standing at the gate telling who can enter into their realms and who would be punished and who would be blessed this week by the news cycle. Like the tabloids, right? They raise them up and then they tear them down. And I think the press here with this administration and the relationship that they have is vitriolic because for the first time ever, an administration is sitting down and saying, you guys are the problem, not America. You guys are the problem, not our policies. If they were fair in any case whatsoever, if the press here were fair about what this administration is doing, you would not see the kind of toxicity that you witness every single day in that briefing room. on public television. And I think it's just a sign of desperation on the press's part.
You've had some great interactions with the president. Can you describe to our viewers what they've been like? I mean, you've had great dialogue. And again, I think you come from the point of view where you're being fair. You ask tough questions, but there's a level of fairness, and you had a good interaction. Can you describe what that's felt like as a journalist?
Sure. I'm sorry if there's a glare on my face, but I might
It's
mute
fine.
that. But the question is asked of me often: if you are an America First journalist, how can you consider yourself a journalist and cover this White House? And my answer has been, you don't have to be a fan of someone in order to, how do I put this? You can be a fan of someone and you can also be tough on them as well. But you can be fair as well. And that's the fairness is what is fundamentally lacking in this press room. And that's all we bring. Even if OAN is highly supportive of America First policies, we are also fair. We report facts, we report dates, times, names, and we try and be as fair with the facts as we possibly can. And the interactions with the president, though, have been, my first question with the president, I believe, was from the Rose Garden. And I remember having all these questions in my mind, and I had them written out on my notebook. And the moment he calls on you, all those questions just fly out the window. And I didn't even expect him to call on me. He had been calling on everybody else. I've been raising my hand. And all of a sudden he says, OAN. I had 12 questions. All of them flew out the window, and I stood up. My heart was beating. My legs were shaking. And I think this would apply to any president. I don't know if this was just specifically because it was President Trump, but it was just when you're on national camera, national TV, people are watching, and you get to ask the president a question. A lot of things are going. A lot of emotions are swelling through. So if I asked my question, and I hope. I believe it was in the East room or the diplomatic room, and we were talking about the killing of Soleimani, and I had asked whether or not the raids on Syria had been tied with the death of Soleimani. And he responded and he said, "We love your network. You guys are doing a great job. You're doing a great job." And that was my first question. And then my Rose Garden question, again, heart beating through the chest. It's a very surreal experience, and I don't know if I'll ever quite get used to it. But as time goes on, we've been having these briefings quite often. I think that the briefings with Kaylee are going to be really entertaining going forward.
She's great.
She likes to spar. She has that legal mind, and she's not going to fall to the terms of the press. Oftentimes they want to frame the question, right? And so you watch the dynamic between either the president or Kaylee and how they interact with the press and how they reframe the question or how they banter back and forth. And it's very useful to have the administration's top enemies sitting right there in the front. Very useful, because they're the ones who provide the hard, mean questions that either expose their side for the biases that they have, or it simply brings a fun side for the audience to watch. Never before have we seen an administration and a president spar with the press like we have with President Trump. And regardless of what political affiliation you stand on, this has been a very fun period to watch. And even reporters down here, they say they hate this administration or they hate the policies or they hate President Trump, but I feel they would be very hard pressed to say that this was not an exciting administration to cover, just because of the personalities behind every player in the West Wing.
Sure. One of the questions I want to ask you was and again, I personally think this is unfair treatment of you. Why do you think you've been targeted by some people in the media and people, particularly on Twitter? I mean, I think it's completely unfair and inappropriate. And how have you gotten through it?
Well, as much opposition as you've seen, I've also received a flood of support from people who really appreciate the fact that we're standing up against these partisan reporters. And I believe they started targeting us early on, but I think they started targeting us especially because the president would call on me in the press briefing room. They would call on my colleague, Jen Pellegrino. We started receiving a lot of momentum because people were appreciating the questions we were asking. And they saw us every day out there asking fair questions that Americans wanted to hear. And I think that there's, I think you see a lot of insecurities lash out from some of these outlets, especially when they feel like they were the kingmakers in the past. And now they see that this administration is no longer allowing outlets that used to be kingmakers to be kingmakers. They are no longer in that position. So they're lashing out from a place of insecurity, I think, Manny. So I think that would sum up easiest what that's about. As far as me personally, I think that if I can plug something, I started, we have a lot of different wars happening. One of the wars was the fact that CNN reported that I was walking out of the White House grounds, tail between my legs, hauling out my own chair because I wasn't allowed to bring one in. Well, the chair is literally sitting in the basement right now. I was bringing it in and out on a daily basis because I wanted to protect it. I didn't know what these guys would do to it. And I responded to the guy and I told him, I corrected the record. And it was interesting, Manny, to look at the responses under the correcting CNN's record tweets. Anytime anyone does that, like the responses from people are just, you see a lot of pent up anger about why are these people acting like such juveniles? Why are they acting like bullies? Why are they acting like high school children? There is no civility in this kind of behavior. And I think you just have to judge for yourself. Look at the comments, look at who's attacking me, look at who's attacking OAN. And I think that it would be easy to come to the conclusion that a lot of that kind of vitriol comes from animals who have been pushed into the corner somehow. And they feel like they're in a prone or in a dangerous position themselves.
Well, I'm impressed. I'm thoroughly impressed with your motivation, determination, and strength. And it disturbs me when I see that because I just think it's unfair. And I think you're absolutely right that people use social media to bully, and people feel encouraged to say things in social media that they would never want to confront someone with. But nonetheless, my chair was taped up. I get anonymous notes on my desk. I have people taping off my little area where I'm allowed to stand, even if the press office has personally invited me to stand in that briefing room. I stand there every time we have a briefing at the invitation of the White House because they understand that the press certain members of the press here think that they own that briefing room, and they don't, but they think they do. And it should be an interesting turf war going forward, but it's been fun. What about just in the last couple of minutes, I wanted to ask you about COVID in terms of how that's changed things, your impression of how that's changed things in the country. Covering the president in the White House, there's a lot of tension, as I mentioned earlier, around the coronavirus task force as well.
So the main concern right now is within the walls of the White House. We have some key members of the vice president's office and of the administration who have tested positive for COVID. This in conjunction with the effort from the White House to reopen the country safely. And it's going to be interesting to watch how they juggle those two things. I think they have everything under control as far as keeping their social distancing in the White House. Everyone is tested every single day. They have to. I think that key members of the task force have to be taking therapeutics or something to prevent themselves from catching this virus. We don't know what they're taking or what they're doing, but we know that they're taking tests every day. They are wearing masks and they're keeping their social distance. So that is going to be playing in the background. And the more the president tries to reopen the country, the more the media is going to really hone in and say like, oh, look, this person is sick or that person is sick. But it's something it's again a moment to remind ourselves that this virus is, for the most part, not going to kill you. You are not going to die from this virus unless you have an underlying condition or you are elderly. And that's just something that the White House can't really come out and say it because they look callous. But at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the hard numbers, most of the deaths that are coming out of this virus are coming out of nursing home facilities. They're coming out of healthcare facilities that have people who have underlying conditions. And for the most part, Americans really are eager to get back to work. And the White House is cognizant. They're juggling these two very sensitive issues. We want to be safe. We want to make sure Americans feel safe. But we also want to acknowledge that we also want to open up the country just as much as the rest of the country does. And not opening the country will cost lives. Not opening the country will cost our civil liberties in certain states. You look at some atrocious things that are taking place, trampling down on people's fundamental rights and freedoms. Sure. Over the course of this virus. And so it's a very interesting thing to watch this administration juggle those two concerns. This administration is mostly leaning on the side of reopening as a solution to the problem, not a preventative, or closing down the country as a preventative measure. It's just, there's going to be a strong push, but watch the media. They're going to continue to focus on what's happening behind these walls and who's being infected next. And they're also the press is going to use that as an excuse to also ignore some of the major developments coming out of the now revived Russia investigation when it comes to what the Democrats were doing. With the release of those transcripts, the Democrats should be very afraid right now for how that whole situation really overplayed itself in very unjust ways. So those are narratives that the White House will be tracking, will be wanting to talk about. The press will obviously have a different agenda. They want to keep talking about masks. They want to keep talking about ventilators. They want to keep talking about children being infected by this virus. And we know that there's a very hard drive from the press and from the left who want to make sure that this virus lasts as long as it possibly can and the economy is closed as long as it can. The White House is just not of that position. And I think that we'll see a reopening that will be very, very successful, especially as all these different states take different measures for their populations. That's a very strong approach. I think it'll be a matter of time before people realize that this is something that we can handle. We can reopen in phases, and the White House does have the right people on its task force to help guide us through that reopening.
This has been tremendous. I really want to sincerely thank you for your time. How can people find you? How can my viewers find you? You're on OAN. Do you have a blog as well? And what's your social media handles?
On Twitter, I'm Chanel Rion, ChanelRion. And then with OAN, please make sure if you don't have OAN on your cable provider, kindly call your cable provider and ask if they would carry OAN. We're on DirecTV. We're on a number of channels normally, but if we're not, call your provider and ask for them to put OAN on the lineup. If you don't have cable, then go to Cloud TV, KLOWD TV.com, and you can subscribe to us, $4.99 a month. It's a good investment. We have a lot of people saying that they cut the cord and they're just subscribing to OAN now. So there are many ways that you can watch OAN. Please visit our website, oann.com. And every weekend we have a fantastic 30-minute deep dive investigation, OAN Investigates, and I highly recommend them. They're kind of like 60 minutes, but with a slightly more sane approach, and I think your audience would enjoy watching it. So visit us in all of those avenues.
And you have specific reporting that you do as well, right? On social media. I know you put out some comments
every day on OAN. I'm live at 12:30, and then I put out news packages, and then I put out these special investigations along with my colleagues here in the DC Bureau. But you can catch me at 12:30 Eastern every day on from the North Lawn Broadcasting here.
Well, this has been tremendous. Make sure, please check out Chanel Rion. She's a superstar. I'm sure you've seen her. And she's at the White House. She's right there. in the middle of it. And I have, nothing but, great, my point of view in terms of not only interviewing her, but just her career trajectory is tremendous. It's been, as she mentioned, it's been a very quick trajectory into what I think is, tremendous rise to a very important position. And she clearly gets it. So make sure you watch her and you follow her. And this is Manny Alejandro. I want to thank you so much for watching this episode of Manny's Take. Take care. I'll see you soon.